Let's go. Today we are going to be talking about pro-life, pro-choice, and pro-birth. I am a pro-birth person. I cannot argue that I am pro-life, and I used to be pro-choice. So let's get into it. All right, pro-choice is the easy one. It means that women have a right to decide to kill their babies or not. Now, we can get into a lot of arguments on science and things like that, which we will, but let's just start with my own personal background. I grew up in a fairly conservative home, but was told that if I were to get pregnant while living at home, abortion would be my only choice, and I better not bring home a black boy. Okay, that's where I came from. I did not have any kind of family support or anything. I was kicked out at 18 for attitude, not because I was doing anything necessarily bad or wrong, coming home late, things like that. At 18, having graduated from high school, I had a curfew and things like that. So, yeah, it was a little strict. So I did get kicked out a month after I turned 18, and within a year and a half, I was pregnant. His name was Dustin Cluse. He had already had a baby with somebody else. His little boy Braden was adorable, and I loved him. And rumors were going around North Idaho that he may have had multiple babies at that time. I thought I was hungover at first, and that was in October. And by December, 3 months pregnant, I had my abortion. When I told him that I was pregnant, his response was something along the lines of, I kind of assumed with how you've been acting, but it's up to you what you want to do. Did not pay for it, brought his friend to the Planned Parenthood, didn't stay with me. It was super awesome, let me just tell you. When that happened, when I got pregnant, I'm going to tell you, I was so excited. I was so excited at first to have a baby. All I ever wanted was to be a mom. I just thought it was the best thing ever. Within that 10 minutes of taking that test, seeing the positive, knowing I was pregnant, I went from, oh my gosh, this is so exciting, to I cannot do this. Like, I am working 2 jobs. I have no support. I have, I was living in an apartment. My family would have, disowned me. And the man was obviously not on board to be a supportive parent, to contribute financially, anything like that. And so, of course, pro-choice was the option. It did not seem to be another option for me at the time. So we went, me and my girlfriend Jen. She took me, and they do not let you see an ultrasound, which I do think is a huge fallacy that they create, or that they've instituted. I could not take pills at the time. I had never taken any kind of medicine, and so the drugs that they give you before they do the abortion, the DNC, whatever you want to call it, did not work. I had to take basic pain medicine, and I felt everything, and it was brutal. I cried through the whole thing. It hurt horribly. I cried the whole way home. I puked the whole way. Well, not even to my home. I couldn't even go to my home. I had to go to my friend's home, because if I would have gone back home and my family would have found out, or, to my apartment, or if I had gone around my family, they would have known and, again, disowned me. So I was on my friend's couch, bleeding out, miserable, killing my baby. I have advocated for pro-choice my entire political career since I was 18 and I could vote. That has been a driving factor of my vote. Now, the more education, the more I learned, the more I opened myself up to it, and as soon as I had my first baby, that all changed. Now, when I got married, I was 23, and we tried instantly to have a baby. So we got married May 25th. By, I want to say July, I was pregnant, and I lost that, no, by August, September, October, November, it was close. So I miscarried in December, and I was only about 9 weeks when I miscarried. That was the worst thing that short of the miscarriage or the abortion, which was my choice, right? But miscarrying around that same time, knowing that I believed I was pregnant, knowing that I wanted this baby, knowing that losing that baby was so hard, I realized that I killed a baby with my abortion. That I did that. And I really did believe that the miscarriage was God's way of making me pay for that. Like, you took a baby that I tried to give you, I'm going to take a baby now that you want. The guilt that I carry because of that is awful. The shame that I carry because of that is awful. Now, I do believe in Jesus, and I have asked for forgiveness, and it still gets me, even now to this day, that I believe that that was the right choice. And I believed it was the right choice because of my circumstances. So, pro-choice, again, I never believed after 3 months you should be allowed an abortion, because after 3 months I do believe that that baby could be viable outside of the womb. And if you were that desperate to purge that baby out of your system, give birth. Have a forced C-section. I don't even care. But you can start to determine the sex at that point and things like that. That is a human. That is a baby. 20 weeks is, I believe, the youngest a baby has been born and survived. He is now 2. That's an amazing story. You should look it up. But also, I do believe that you are pregnant at conception. I do believe that that is a human baby. Not once after taking that test did I say, oh, I have a clump of cells growing in me. I said I was pregnant. You take a pregnancy test. Pregnancy means that you are carrying the spawn of your species. Okay? When women that are pro-choice want to argue that it's just a clump of cells, are you taking a clump of cells test? Is that what's happening? No, you take a pregnancy test. And then you go get rid of that pregnancy. That pregnancy means that there's a baby growing in there. It's not a tumor. It's not a clump of cells, okay? So all of that needs to just stop. But back to me being pro-choice and then having my babies. I have 4 now. 4 healthy, amazing, strong babies, an 18-year-old, an almost 17-year-old, and twin 10-year-olds, okay? So I'm a mom. That is what my heart and my soul wanted to be, and the fact that I willingly chose to eliminate a baby from my body is heartbreaking. It's so devastating. So doing my own research, leaning into it, learning, following things that were outside of my own opinion, and watching the other side of the story happen definitely did change my opinion. And I have to now kind of switch it, and I'm going to say I am pro-birth. Okay? Now, people that are pro-life believe that this baby has the right to be born, but here's where I struggle with pro-lifers. A lot of them believe in the death penalty. How can you be pro-life and advocate for government murder? That is the next line that I am contemplating for myself, because yes, I do not think women should choose to abort their baby ever. That is hands down now. I am not pro-abortion at all. I am not pro-choice. I think you should have to give birth to that baby. Okay? So I am pro-birth. I do believe that is a human growing inside of you from conception. But also with pro-lifers, I would like to bring up the IVF. Petri dish babies, embryos, things like that are created and then discarded. If you believe that conception starts at, or that, life can start at conception, then those fertilized eggs are babies. So you cannot be pro-life and then also be pro-IVF, pro-discard the ones you don't want, all of those things. Any egg that is fertilized, that is an embryo, that is a baby, okay? So that's one of my first problems with pro-life. The other one is the death penalty. Now, I do believe that certain crimes, any violent crime against another person, should warrant death. I do believe that. I think child abuse, any kind of pedophilia, anything like that, I do believe that. I do not believe it should be in the government's hands. I do believe it is the right of the victim to decide that. I do not think the government should be involved in that decision at all. I do not think any non-violent crimes should ever be on death row or death penalty. I do not believe that should exist. I do not believe that if you commit traffic violations or something like that, you go to jail or whatever, like that should not be an issue, okay? So I cannot say that I am pro-life, because I do believe there are certain circumstances where life should be taken. So again, pro-lifers, if you are pro-life, you should be anti-war, anti-draft, anti-death penalty. That is not what a lot of them believe. So then let's go to the pro-birth category, which I think people need to start kind of identifying as an option. I believe all babies should be born. Whether that baby is going to die at birth or not, it does not matter. Whether or not you give that baby up for adoption or whatever, or if you go drop it in a safe box at a fire department. Pro-birth is where I'm at. I am not pro-life because I do believe rape victims, assault victims, domestic violence victims, I do believe they should have a say in whether or not that person who caused them physical harm should live or not. That is my one rule. If you infringe on someone else's body, that is the ultimate line in the sand for me. That is what made me a libertarian. The right to pursue your own life without harm to others. So I cannot be pro-birth. So if you are arguing that you're pro-life, but you support war, the death penalty, if you think an eye for an eye, you need to rethink your position. So now let's get to the pro-life, pro-choice. Again, once that pregnancy happens, again, you take a pregnancy test to find out if you're pregnant, a pregnancy test, okay? There are two people that have now created life. Fathers' rights matter. Now, fathers' rights count when women want money and pretty much nothing else. So these women that are like, men should not have a say in whether or not I keep this baby, should also agree that men don't have a say in whether or not they pay for that baby. You know what I'm saying? So you can't argue for the man has no say in whether or not I keep this baby, but then if you keep the baby, you get to have money from him and he has no rights. So there is also that weird kind of inconsistency, right? Where, again, they don't think women should have, or men should have a right to say in women's bodies, but they also want to argue about, like, well, if a woman gets raped, she should be able to abort that baby, right? But again, that's saying because the man was involved in it, right? The wrong man was involved in the creating of this baby, right? Which a lot of women have babies with the wrong men, right? Like, let's just be real. There's a lot of drunk, abusive, thieves, con artists that are having babies with women, right? Rape is, again, I think, one of the ultimate crimes that should not be allowed to live. So, but the baby did not, okay? And again, a lot of women have babies with the wrong men for the wrong reasons. So arguing that because you married the wrong man or that you had sex with the wrong man and you got pregnant is now the right to kill somebody is not a logical argument to me, okay? Also, if you believe that men do not have a say in women's bodies and you choose to carry a baby full term that a man did not want, that is your choice. That is your choice, and you should allow that man to relinquish his rights financially and whatever. Because again, you cannot argue that they don't have a say and then carry a baby that a man doesn't want and expect him to be responsible for it. Which also lends itself to surrogacy, sperm donors, egg donors. Okay? Now, egg donors, women donating their eggs, that is half of them. That is their baby piece that they are giving up. There are now studies, or not studies, but there are now stories coming out with egg donor babies that came from egg donors wanting to find out their biological parents because those biologics are different than the family they are born into. What if you have a run of history of, cardio problem or like heart problems? What if you have a history of cancer or diabetes, right? And you're a child born of an egg donor who's experiencing things that your family is not. You want to find that out. I do believe that is unethical to be donating your eggs and your sperm. I do believe that. Even if you relinquish your rights, you still have part of your DNA out there that is going to want to know you. I believe that. Also, sperm donors. There is a lesbian couple right now that is making the news because married lesbian couple, used a sperm donor to get pregnant, got divorced, And the parent that got pregnant with the sperm donor is now coming after that sperm donor for paternity rights. So again, if you are arguing that that person had a part of your baby that now they're responsible for, then you're acknowledging that life begins at conception, not at birth, because if life began at birth, that man would have no rights, no say, nothing, right? It would just be you and your lesbian lover. So that again is a weird gray area with pro-choicers who don't think men should have a say, but that men should be held accountable. Okay, so either you get to have a say and you're accountable, or you don't get a say and you're not accountable, is my point. Then you've got adoption and things like that. Now, you could do closed adoption, but a lot of times those people will submit, their medical records. They will have some documentation so that if these future children need to know or want to know anything, it's there, right? They can have access to that. So, again, pro-choice, you have a lot of weird things that don't line up. So, I would just like to say that I believe conception starts at fertilization. That is a baby growing. I'm going to bet that if you are in a group of women over 30, at least one has had an abortion. I'm going to bet that those people that have had abortions did not do it for medical. It was not a life-threatening. It was a lifestyle-threatening choice. So, guaranteed, if you were to ask anyone in your circle right now if they have had an abortion, and you ask them why, they would say, because it wasn't the right time. It wasn't the right time because I had a job, because I didn't have a husband, because the man was not involved, because I was busy doing this, I was trying to establish my career, I was going to school, or whatever it is. It's not going to be because they didn't want a baby. 99% of those women that had abortions have children now. Love being moms. Okay? So it was not a life-threatening thing or whatever that they chose to have an abortion for. This was I do not have the support, the time, the finances to take care of a baby on my own, or with this man who doesn't want to be involved, or whatever it is, and so I'm choosing to abort it. I guarantee that is, if you look around right now and you are in a room of, let's say, 5 women over 30, one has had an abortion, at least one has had an abortion, and it's because they were not in the right place to do it. Now, let's talk about that. Why is it pro-choice if you are not in a lifestyle to allow for this baby? It's because of your family dynamics, it's because of your job, it's because of your career. So pro-lifers, take note. If you would like women to have babies, even if they are not in a position to do that, or if they feel like they are not in a position to do that, you need to start rethinking your laws, your employers, your school, all of these different criterias and habits. We need to make maternity leave mandatory. Medical leave mandatory if you are pregnant. People that are like, it's 10 months, by the way, 10 months, it's 10 months of your life to have this baby. Yes. And there are women who have placenta previa, which I did with the twins, which means you are on a high-risk pregnancy, which means you have limited activity. So if I was a single mom and I got pregnant with twins and I had all the issues that I had as a single mom, that would have been impossible. Like, it would have been so hard. I would have been on state aid. I would not have been able to work. Okay, I was driving around with a puke bucket in my car because I could not eat anything. I could not keep anything down from day one. Okay, this was not something that went away during my pregnancy. I lost so much weight with my twins first off the bat. And I was in real estate, and I would be showing homes and be like, excuse me, okay, so professional, right? But I had no other options. I had to work. My husband was not making a lot of money at the time. He was not very supportive. He fully expected me to keep working. And if I would have had any kind of medical leave or something, that obviously would have made my life easier, right? Being a stay-at-home mom is the goal. That is my dream. Even though my children are older now, I would still love to be able to still be mostly home with them. But maternity leave knowing that like I wouldn't have to put my newborn baby in daycare. And then how do I pay for daycare if I'm trying to go back to work? Right? If I'm trying to go back to work right after I had a baby and I can't afford daycare, or if every income or everything that I'm making as a stay-at-home mom or a mom or whatever is going to daycare, how do I get off state aid? How do I do that? So we need to look at programs. We need to look at the actual system that creates this environment where women feel like they can't have a baby because they're on their own. So pro-lifers, if you are not voting for medical leave for maternity, if you are not supportive of, moms that are trying to carry these babies to term, that are puking, that are on bed rest or whatever, that don't want to put their babies into daycare straight off the bat when they're like a newborn, then you need to help facilitate it. You need to be voting for politicians who will allow for free medical for pregnancy, for maternity leave. Okay, you need to be advocating for those, because the 99% of the reason why women are pro-choice and do not want to have these babies is because it will fuck up their lives. It will put them behind on their jobs. It will put them behind on their careers. It will put them behind financially. And it's a hole that you can't get out of. And to achieve that, you're then trusting your babies with strangers. You're putting them in daycares. You're letting strangers off the street watch them. You're like doing whatever you can. And that's obviously not the best situation. So do not be pro-life and then say, I don't want to have health care. I don't want to allow for maternity leave. Every mom deserves, I would say, at least 12 weeks of maternity leave. Let's get that baby stable. Let's get that baby at least to where it can like pick up its own head. You know what I'm saying? So that if there is harm caused to that baby in daycare or with those strangers watching it or whatever it is that this mom has to do, that we can hopefully catch it and protect that baby sooner. Because again, we are seeing a run of daycare, childcare deaths in these babies, where single moms are having to trust whoever to go to work and their babies are dying. So you advocate for pro-life, but then you abandon those babies after they're born. You do not support life after birth, okay? So again, you can argue that you're pro-birth. Like, I want to have every baby be born, but I don't want to do anything with it. I don't want to help. I don't want to support it. I don't want to provide environments and safe places for these moms. That is number one, the problem. That is why women have to say they're pro-choice. Because they don't have support. Because they cannot see a world here in America, the greatest country in the world, where they could do a baby and life and be successful. Okay? I was 22 when I met my husband, my ex-husband. I had worked retail my whole life. I was not encouraged to go to school as a child in my house. I was, again, kicked out at 18. So, living my best life here as a teenager, okay, figuring out, like, I was assistant manager of Vanity. I was the manager of the Alert Cellular kiosk, T-Mobile kiosk in the mall. It wasn't like I was not doing the best I could. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've always been management, team lead, key officer kind of thing. I have never just been a grunt really anywhere. I've almost always worked two jobs. So when I worked at Vanity, I worked at Sunglass Hut. I also worked at Wilson's Leather. I also worked at Things Remembered seasonally. I have always hustled and worked as much as I could. When I got married, I looked into getting my Idaho real estate license and got pregnant and all of these things. And I was like, that's really hard. Like, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. I can't imagine having a baby and trying to do real estate and stuff with a husband that was working and building a business and whatever. And so by the time that I actually did have my first baby at 25, okay, I had nothing. I had no college degree. I had been working, again, retail and sales for 6 years, 16, 15, I think was when I started at Arby's. So 6 years of experience of retail, and then I became a mother, and then I did not work again for like another 2 years. After my second was born, we needed the money, and so I did get a seasonal job at Nordstrom, working part-time in petites, and that did progress to a full-time position. I did get kept longer than seasonal because that's how good I am. And I worked that job until we were getting ready to move to Florida. So in a span of 10 years, I worked retail and whatever, and then I became a stay-at-home mom permanently when my middle was about 2 years old. When she was about 2, I did not work again. I did get my real estate license, and I did do that very little part-time, helping friends and family. My first year was my best year, doing 10 transactions, and that was when I had both girls in school. My ex was traveling. He was gone for like 4 months, and I did it on my own, and it was amazing. And then I got pregnant with twins, and that knocked me down. So we got pregnant, April, May, June, somewhere in there. July, I announced that we were having twins. It was crazy. And then by October, I was getting steroid shots. I was on limited activity. I was already kind of on bed rest, right? My twins were due the end of January. I went into labor. I was in like preterm labor from like August on. I was just miserable all the time, every time. Like it was hard. Like I said, steroid shots in October to try and get the baby strong enough just in case. And then, so 6 weeks early, they were born. Again, like I said, they were due the end of January. So typically with twins, they will take them about 4 weeks early. So I should have given birth the beginning of January. But I went into labor with my twins December 26th, and within 4 hours they were born. 6 weeks early. I was in the hospital for a week with them before they could come home, which is not, again, standard. Most twins that are born that early have to stay until their delivery date. I should have been in that hospital for a month. So again, if I had been a single parent on bed rest, having to go to the hospital weekly for checkups and steroid shots, being on limited activity, so I couldn't carry anything, I couldn't go up and down stairs, right? I couldn't do anything except like walk myself to the bathroom, shower, and then go back down, right? So imagine how hard it would have been to keep a job. What job would have allowed me to call in the day of my shift and be like, I'm really sorry, I'm puking, I can't get up off the couch, I'm miserable, I can't move. Like, I would have been fired. Okay? Then to have birth be 6 weeks early, so not even being able to plan for maternity leave or anything, and then having to be in the hospital for a week. I could not have gone straight back to work. Okay? And then I had these tiny little preemie babies. Are you really telling me I was supposed to find a daycare for 2 babies and go back to work? Do you understand how impossible that would have been? With the very little help that I did get from my own mother and my ex-husband, I was still doing most of that alone. Okay? Multiple pictures and videos of me feeding both babies, being in the hospital alone for a week because Shad was home with our other 2 kids, even though grandma was there. He let me deal with that by myself. He would come by maybe an hour or 2 a day to hang out with us. So really by myself. I could not have imagined that by myself with no other person in the household making income for me. Okay? Like, so hard. So then I give birth to these twins 6 weeks early, taking care of them. And within 2 years, the 2 people that I had as babysitters and support that I trusted, my mother and my sister, were dead. So now I have 2-year-olds plus my older 2, and I'm doing it again by myself. My ex is off working, he's traveling, he's a professional hunter, he's guiding, whatever he's doing. He's not home. To such an extent that most people did not realize that I was married until the end of the school year. Most people assumed, because I did every conference by myself, I did every school event by myself, like there were so few times when my ex-husband would actually show up that a lot of people assumed I was a single mom, doing it all by myself, okay? So imagine that, trying to go back to work. What job would I have done? McDonald's, I guess. I could have done something like that, whatever, which would not have made me enough money to pay for the daycare, the before and after school care that I would have needed for the older girls, all of that. Okay? So I was a stay-at-home mom, doing real estate, 1 or 2 deals a year, just enough to kind of pay for my dues, pay for my fees, continuing education, and a little extra income, to help with, our family finances. Fast forward 5 years after they were born, and I get divorced. My ex has not worked in years. We have no money. Our house is falling apart. He has started projects, left them undone. Now I have to go back to work as a single mom of 4 with full custody, kids that are in 3 different buildings, a vehicle that was not running. What is available? What was available to me? I got a job doing a evening shift at a hotel, and then I got diagnosed with cancer. And they let me go. So I worked for about 3 months before I got fired for, failure to ability to do the job. Something like that is why they let me go, because they did not think I would be able to maintain my ability to do the job going through chemo and stuff, which granted, they were right. Once I did get diagnosed, I was in the hospital, multiple doctor's appointments a week until I started chemo in June and whatever. Again, just trying to explain and spell out how hard it is with at least a little bit of help and somebody that was making a little bit of money for me to then get back on my feet as somebody who never got a college degree, who'd only worked retail, who did not have a real job on her resume for 10 years. Okay? The only jobs available are minimum wage, sales, part-time type things, right? So I spent my year going through cancer treatments, surgeries, double mastectomy, radiation, daily radiation for a month, okay? Which kills your body, by the way. You're just run down, achy, sore, tired. There's not a lot of energy. Again, still not eating a lot. It's a lot, okay? Go into the workforce, and here we are 4 years later, and I still cannot seem to get a job that will pay for my family of 5. I cannot get job interviews. I cannot get hired. I cannot seem to get anything that will actually pay me enough money to get ahead, because I do not have a college degree and because I was a stay-at-home mom for years. So when you are asking these women to give birth to babies with no support, no medical, nothing, this is what you're asking for, is women who are at 44 cannot barely take care of themselves, survive, or anything, okay? So pro-lifers really need to look at the environment they have created that makes women want to be pro-choice. Because it's toxic. It is a horrible system. There is no help for women who actually do want to have babies. I actually do want to be a mom. I actually do want to be able to take care of my kids. I actually do want to feed them home-cooked meals and take them to activities and be involved in the classroom. But I cannot afford to, because I have no support. I have no money. I have no background. And to get into school, to now get a degree, to actually be able to do that, I have to apply for state aid. I have to get financial aid. I have to still find people that can pick up my kids and take them to school if I am going to be in class during that time. It's so hard. You make it so hard. So if you want more women to be pro-life, pro-birth, you have to create an environment for that. So pro-lifers, look at yourself in the mirror. Look at how you vote. Look at how you are derogatory toward moms who are on state income, who get food stamps, who get cash benefits. I do not get child support from my ex-husband. All I asked for when we got divorced was that he would continue paying for the home. $1,600 a month is what I asked for 4 kids. I had full custody. The first year and a half that we were divorced, I had full custody. He had them every other weekend. Now, he would like to argue that it's because he didn't have the environment to take care of them or whatever, even though he was living with friends and whatever. That is what he chose. That is what he chose. He did not choose to take them any more than that every other weekend until he got a job and he could get an apartment, and then he went 50-50. We have only been 50-50 for about 4 years out of our 5.5 year divorce. And it is because he took that long to get a job that he could afford to then, with 3 college degrees, with me having the kids the whole time. It took this man a year with his 3 degrees to find a job that he could do and, afford his lifestyle. So again, as a stay-at-home mom that chose to have babies, I cannot do anything. I cannot get ahead. I cannot save my life. So I am pro-birth. I do not believe that anyone has the right to kill any human, especially one that has caused no harm, which is a baby. And a baby is, as soon as you get those clump of cells that are growing, you take that pregnancy test, you are pregnant. Not a clump of cell test. Not a clump of cell test, okay? So you have those babies, you get, you want to have that baby. I'm just saying, you want to have that baby, then it needs to be easier. I almost guarantee that every woman that has had an abortion was like, oh, if only I was in a better place to have this baby. And guess what? America is not that place. America is not a better place for women who want to try and have babies. Okay? Now, yes, they could, let's say, there's a woman who wants to have a baby and a man that doesn't want to have a baby, and so she chooses to have an abortion because that man does not want to help support her. That happens too, right? I do not, again, believe in any way, shape, or form that any abortion should take place after the 3rd month. At that point, I do believe a baby is viable. So even that argument, I feel like, is null and void. Pro-choicers, you should be ashamed of yourself. Because again, if you have any children in your life that you have celebrated a gender reveal party for or a baby shower for, then you understand that that is a baby inside that woman. If you have nieces, nephews, if you have your own children, you understand that that is a baby. It is not a clump of cells. So I would love for you to go to your sister, your aunt, your, whoever, and be like, oh, how's that clump of cells growing in your body until they give birth? Until they give birth, you pro-choicers should refuse to acknowledge that that is a baby until that baby is born. And what do you guys argue? That they can breathe and live on their own. So if you have ever had anybody that has a preemie baby that is in the NICU, ICU, that has to have oxygen, walk up to those moms and tell them that their clump of cells don't matter. Tell them that that does not count as a baby or as a human because it cannot survive on its own. I dare you. I dare you to say that, pro-choicers. Okay? I fully expect you to not go to any celebratory act. You better not be touching anybody's belly. You better not be talking to that baby, buying that baby gifts, because it's just a clump of cells and it does not exist. It is not a human until it can survive on its own. So again, even still, your argument is that because we have to breastfeed them or give them bottles and change their diapers, that technically they're not human because they can't take care of themselves, because they cannot survive without help. If that's your argument also, pro-choicers, does that mean that when your grandpa has a heart attack and he has to go on an oxygen machine that he's no longer human? Paraplegics can't exist without help. They're not human. They're just a clump of cells. We should just kill them all. It should be pro-choice whether or not you want to keep these. The minute anybody has to require anything to survive. So diabetics with insulin pumps, not human, just a clump of cells because they couldn't survive without help. Right? Heart issues, any cancer patients, right, that have to have chemo or dialysis or anything like that, not human, just a clump of cells because they can't survive without help. You really need to look at your argument, okay? Because it's crap. It's bullshit. We all know it. So, that's where I'm at with that. Pro-life, pro-choice, and pro-birth are all different, and the only reason why there is pro-choice is because you have not given us a country and environment where the choice of having a baby is easier than the choice of murdering one. I'm just saying. Also, pro-choicers, I would like you to look at a woman who has had a miscarriage under 20 weeks. I mean, even over 20 weeks. Any woman that's had a miscarriage, I want you to have the balls to walk up and say, it doesn't count. It doesn't count. It wasn't human. You just shed some cells. It doesn't count. Have the balls to say that to someone that you love, someone in your life. Tell them to their face that you do not acknowledge that they are carrying a baby, that is your niece, your nephew, your grandchild, whatever it is, until it's born and can survive on its own. You just consider that a clump of cells, and it doesn't matter if they lose it. It doesn't matter if they wanted to carry this baby and they miscarried it and now their heart's broken and they're devastating. It was just a clump of cells. Okay? Say that. I dare you. I dare you to have the balls to say that to their faces. But you won't. You won't. You will celebrate it, and you will hold that baby, and you will be so glad. And if it's a girl, you are going to pray that she has the right to kill her next baby. And you should be ashamed of yourselves for that. Now again, pro-birth versus pro-life. I am definitely pro-birth. However, I am not pro-life because I do believe that some people deserve to die. So also pro-lifers, if you're arguing pro-life, that's all life. You don't get to decide whose lives. You don't get to decide if people go to war and die. You don't get to decide about the death penalty. You better be advocating against the death penalty on all things. If you firmly believe in pro-life, then you have to believe in life across the board for all. Because all rapists, all abusers, all sex traffickers were once that clump of cells that you were fighting to save. So you cannot then at a certain point dictate that that life no longer has the same value as this life. So I am not pro-life. I am not pro-choice. I am pro-birth. Because those babies are all given the same chance. I believe all babies should be given the same chance at life. And then once that life hits, that is up to the environment, the community, the adopted parents, the foster care system. That's a whole nother realm of things that I would like to get into. But that's where I'm at. So, you guys really need to think about how you're showing up in the world, who you're showing up with, how you're going to support the stances that you take. If you are pro-life and you do not advocate for medical, maternity, moms to be able to stay home with those babies, state-funded daycares, whatever it is, then you are not pro-life. Okay? You're not. You just want to force people to have babies, and you do not actually care about the life of any of them. That's my 2 cents on that. So I hope you all came away with some things to think about. Maybe I challenged some beliefs. I hope so. I love fish face moments when someone can drop a bomb on me and I go, like, I want to argue, but your logic is there. That is where I'm at. I want to do that. I want to make you rethink your opinion and challenge trains of thoughts, and why not start here? So, former pro-choicer who is a pro-birther, and again, I'm only not a pro-lifer because I do believe that victims and victims' families of murder, rape, assault, whatever, crimes that cause harm to another person physically, should have the right to dictate whether or not they take that person's life. I do not think it should be government. I do not think it should be up to a court to decide. I think it should be between that victim and that perpetrator. And if that victim decides that they want to take an eye for an eye, a life for a life, they should be allowed to do that. I don't know how. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that means they actually have to go out and be the one that does the firing execution, or if they're the ones that gets to inject, the lethal dose. I don't know, but it should not be the government. The government should not be choosing, because that is also, again, does the government get to decide who has babies or not? Does the government get to decide, like, if we live or die, if we agree or not? Like, there's a lot of sketchiness with the government running the death penalty, so that's a conversation for another day. But look at yourself in the mirror. Go look at all the people that are trying to have babies, that are pregnant with babies, that have babies, and really go look at that and that system, because it's flawed, especially here in America. So, there we go. Look forward to next time. I think we're gonna get into a little politics. We will see. Hope you all have an amazing Day.